It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 30, looking at the players of the 2025 Gold Cup. This episode is looking at the players of El Salvador. Part 2, the selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 30 on the players of the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. This episode is the second part in our coverage of El Salvador's players. The final roster is released and we are looking at El Salvador's selections. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation since the 2023 Gold Cup. We considered a few other factors as well, and we also gave some biographical and career information on the main players if you want to get to know them. In part 2 here, though, our focus is the final squad. The mediacast here is divided into 3 sections, and in section 1, we're going to give some preliminary information on the team. We actually do repeat some of what we said in part 1, but more quickly. Our purpose is to create a narrative for the position summaries in section 2, so this information in section 1 provides a framework for that. Section 2, though, is the main part of the mediacast. We review the list that we compiled in part 1. So we're going to tell you who made the final squad and the preliminary squad. We also tried to predict starters. So to do that, we examine each position and tell the story of who has played it since the last Gold Cup. And we'll also look at the lineups for the warm-up games recently and see if they give any clues as to who will start. And then in section 3, we will start with our spotlight review, a summary of the players who made the squad and our predicted starters. We'll also review surprise selections and non-selections, any new players, as well as updating on injuries. All right, let us jump right into section 1. And this is some information on the team. Beginning with the squad, so 26 players in the final squad there. That's how many they were allowed to bring. And El Salvador put out just a 44-man preliminary squad. Most teams put out a 60-man preliminary squad, but it was 44 for El Salvador. So that means they would have to cut 18 players to from that preliminary squad to reach the final squad there. Okay, let us move now to recent games. So as we said, we did kind of cover this in part 1. And also in part 1, we talked about the managerial situation over the period. We kind of went into detail on those things. But here, we're going to combine them because, again, we're setting up a framework for understanding the position summaries in part 2. So reviewing formations will also help with that. But we are going much faster than in section 1. So for El Salvador, we begin with under manager Hugo Perez, and he took them through the 2023 Gold Cup in June of 2023. They did not pass the group stage there, and Hugo Perez was released as a manager, but before they played any new games, the new manager, Ruben de la Vera, came in, and he led them through the 2023 Nations League group stage. That is 4 games in September and October. However, they didn't reach the finals there, so they didn't play in the quarterfinals in November or in March. Rather, they had friendlies over that period. That's 2 friendlies in November and a friendly in January and February. After that, Ruben de la Vera was released, actually kind of in between those games in December, and a new manager, David Doniger, came in. He led them through 3 friendlies in March. Again, they didn't have any kind of CONCACAF business to deal with there. And also led them through 2026 World Cup qualifying, because CONCACAF began its qualifying there in June of 2024. So actually that is 2 games there. They did not take part in the Copa America, as some of the CONCACAF teams did. So the next thing they have on the slate is the 2024-25 Nations League, the group stage of that taking part in the fall of 2024. That was actually 6 games. They won their League B group there, which qualified them automatically for the Gold Cup. So again, they had no business in March. So just played a couple of friendlies. However, before that, and despite that success, they got rid of manager David Doniga and brought in new manager Hernan Dario Gomez. We speculated on the reasons for that in part 1, but we won't do that here. And so with no CONCACAF business in March of 2025, they played 2 friendlies, and that was all the new manager got. However, they do have 3 warm-up games, unlike most teams. They did schedule a friendly in late May, and then they have the 2 Gold Cup. The 2 World Cup qualifying matches. We'll talk about them soon. I'm guessing the manager scheduled that extra friendly just to have a bit more time with the team. Anyway, we will look at the Gold Cup matches right away, or actually all 3 of those warm-up games. But just a word on formations, and the formations really kind of show how chaotic it's been. You might guess that with 4 managers over the period, but it's also evident in the formations, where the most common formations they used only 6 times, or 23% of the time. So it was about 10 different formations over the period, changing under the new manager. And frankly, we're going to see that in the selection of players here. So I won't go through those formations. There's really no point. And yeah, just in general, there's about half the time they're using a 3-man back line, and half the time using a 4-man back line, and the same with forwards. 60% of the time they used a 2-man forward line, and 40% a single forward. But really, there's no pattern to it, because it's different managers having different formations there. So not much to talk about there. Let's move on to the recent games, the warm-up games. So as I said, they had a friendly that they scheduled on May 31st. That was played in the USA. It was against Guatemala. We're not interested in the result. We're just interested in the lineups under new manager Hernan Dario Gomez. Their World Cup qualifying games, well, maybe this is significant, because they did not finish first in the group. They played away in Anguilla on June 7th, and on June 10th they played the final game of the round 2 of 3 group. That was a home tie with Suriname, and that allowed Suriname to finish ahead of them. So again, kind of evidence of the chaos during this period, that they did not win that group. They do nevertheless pass to the next round of the World Cup qualifying. But what we're interested in here is the lineups for those, because things are very unsettled even up until March, even up until the 2 friendlies that the new manager had. So we're really anxious to look at these games to see if the lineup kind of settles down. Okay, I've already moved ahead in the graphics, but it is time in the talking here to move on to the candidates in section 2. So we begin with managers. Again, that's a pretty long story over the period, and we're not going to repeat it all here. we will just say that Hernan Dario Gomez was not fired or anything before the tournament, and so he will lead them through. We will consider Gomez a selection for the final squad, as it were, and move on to goalkeepers. Okay, let's look at the candidates first. Then we have a definite candidate in Thomas Romero. However, he was not selected for the final squad. So the first of many surprises here. Actually, his teammate at New York FC was unexpectedly selected for the American squad, the goalkeeper there. However, Thomas Romero, a definite candidate here, not chosen for El Salvador. We have no idea why. I did try to look into it, but didn't find a reason why. We also have definite candidate Mario Gonzalez, and he was selected for the final squad. Oscar Pleitez was a possible candidate. Pleitez, and not selected even for the preliminary squad. We're going to get a lot of surprises here. The first of three possible but unlikely candidates, Kevin Carabantes, was selected for the final squad, and so was the second one, Benji Villalobos. So both of those surprising, because we considered them unlikely. The third unlikely candidate, Gerson Lopez, not selected even for the preliminary squad, and we'll see in section 3 that he was also injured, as if his chances weren't small enough. And then we have seemingly off the squad Sergio Cibrian, not selected even for the preliminary squad. So there we go, a lot of surprises at the goalkeeper level. Let's talk about the position over the period. So it was Thomas Romero starting the first game of the 2023 Gold Cup, but he was replaced after their loss to Martinique in the first game by Mario Gonzalez. The two shared the position after that, most evidently over their 6 Nations League games in late 2024, where they each started 3 of the 6 games. However, new manager Gomez chose Romero for both of the March 2025 friendlies. So that left us thinking, well, maybe we can't predict a definite starter there. But likely starters would be Thomas Romero and Mario Gonzalez alternating. That's what we thought after part 1. However, we look at the warm-up games and see if that seems to be holding true. Well, I'll say, however, Thomas Romero wasn't selected, so that's got to change. And in fact, it was Mario Gonzalez starting all 3 of the games there. So now our prediction changes to Mario Gonzalez as the definite starter. All right, that's the goalkeepers. Let's move on to the defense, and we'll begin by naming the candidates. In central defense, we have 2 definite candidates, Jorge Cruz, and he was selected for the final squad, and so was Julio Cibrian, also a definite candidate and also selected. 2 likely candidates here, we have Aidan Climaco, and he was only selected for the preliminary squad there, so we're getting surprises all over the place here. Rudy Clavel, also a likely candidate, and I actually think we put him ahead of Aidan Climaco just because we thought he was a bit more likely. However, not even selected for the preliminary squad. He had started 12 of their 20 games over the period, so that in itself is a surprise, with many more to come. We have 3 possible candidates, but actually we should have had 4. For some reason, in part 1, we forgot to put Roberto Dominguez on the list there, and we had him as a possible candidate, and he was selected for the final squad. So the first of 4 possible candidates was selected. The second, Melvin Cruz, not selected even for the preliminary squad. The third, Ronald Rodriguez, selected for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. And the fourth one, Henry Romero, was selected for the final squad. Okay, and we had a candidate at the possible but unlikely level, German Fuentes. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad. And the same is true of all three of our seemingly off the squad players, Eric Sabalseta, Eric Zavaleta, and Romulo Villalobos. And just to show you how quickly things change, actually, two of those players, Sabalseta and Zavaleta, were starters in the 2023 Gold Cup. I guess I'm jumping a bit ahead of myself there. I'm just kind of constantly shocked by what's going on here. And I'll tell you what's going on with the summary of the position over the period. So it was a two-man central defence in the 2023 Gold Cup. And as I said, Eric Sabalseta started all three. Eric Zavaleta started two of them. Over the course of the period, really, with the managers changing and the formations changing, it really became a merry-go-round of different players under the various managers. And it's really too complex to go into detail. I tried writing 3 drafts to make it comprehensible, but it was just a really long paragraph. And I thought, well, what's the point? Because it doesn't really matter. Because new manager Hernan Dario Gomez will just have new players. So let's jump to March 2024 for the situation under new manager. And it was Roberto Dominguez in the middle of a 3-man central defense, flanked by Julio Cibrian and Jorge Cruz. That was the first game. But then the second game, the manager was very experimental, using a lot of the starters, but in out of position, using them out of position. So Siberian and Cruz both started that game, but elsewhere on the field, not in central defense. So what does that mean? Well, at the end of part 1, we really had no idea. But we speculated that likely starters would be Julian Cibrian and Jorge Cruz, and possible starter Roberto Dominguez. Well, all 3 of them were selected. Let's look at the warm-up games to see who was fielded. In this case, it's a 2-man defense in all 3 games. Actually a 4-2-3-1 formation, so some consistency in the warm-up games there. And in all 3 cases, talking about consistency, it is Cruz and Cibrian. Cruz and Cibrian. So we now change Cruz and Cibrian to being definite starters, and we don't have and then we have Roberto Dominguez still as a possible starter there. But who knows what we're going to get. Well, as I said, consistency in the warm-up game, so we actually maybe do know what we're going to get. Ooh, I'm jumping way too far ahead in the graphics. We're moving on to left backs, where we have no definite candidates as left defenders. But we do have 2 likely candidates. The first one, Nelson Blanco, again a surprise, selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. The other one, Alexander Larin, was selected for the final squad. We had 1 character at the possible level, that's Diego Flores, and he was selected for the final squad. Possible but unlikely, Alex Roldan, only made the preliminary squad there. And then we had 3 players seemingly off the squad, and none of them making even the preliminary squad. That is Juan Barahona, Eduardo Vigil, and Jonathan Jimenez. Okay, so two candidates selected there, Alexander Larin and Diego Flores. Let's look at the candidates or the position over the period. In the Gold Cup, it was actually right back Alex Roldan playing as a left back in all 3 games of the Gold Cup. But as we see, he was off the team oh, we didn't see that, but he was off the team shortly after. So once again, we have 2023 Gold Cup starters not on the squad here. Two different players started the September 2023 games, but under the new manager in October, left midfielder Walter Martinez started 4 games in a row. Then new manager Donegal brought in a 5-man backline, and Diego Flores played the first 3 games under him, and then Nelson Blanco. Flores and Blanco alternated for a while, but by September 2024, it was Blanco together with Alexander Larin rotating, each of them playing 3 of the 6 2024 Nations League group stage. Okay, so I gave that because it's one of the more comprehensible positions. At least some of the candidates are fairly consistent. But again, it doesn't really matter, because what matters is how it looked under new manager Hernandario Gomez. He chose Blanco for the first of the March 2025 friendlies, but none of the players we've talked about here were used in the experimental second game. I said players were playing out of position in that game, and here we have central defender Cibrian lining up as the left back in that second March game. So as far as it went under at the end of part 1, we were thinking no definite starter. We can't name one, but we were thinking either Nelson Blanco or Alexander Larin as likely starters. But let's see what the manager did in the warm-up games here. And here, actually, we have right back Brian Tamakas starting the friendly there at the end of May, but then Alexander Larin starting both World Cup qualifiers there. Okay, so that changes us to, well, Blanco is not selected, so we have to get rid of him again. We're not going to be brave enough to name a definite starter, although Alexander Larin does seem a likely starter. And we would put Brian Tamakas as the first backup, given that he played in the friendly, but we're not going to do that because of the situation on the right side. We don't think they can afford to move him over to the left, and we'll see why right away. Here, as we move on to right backs, we have a definite candidate in Teresa Benitez. However, he was not selected. Our likely candidate, Brian Tamakas, who we just met on the left, was selected for the final squad. And we had no candidates at the possible or even possible but unlikely level, just 4 candidates at the seemingly off the squad. Amongst these 4, Nelson Rodriguez was the only one to make the preliminary squad there, and the other 3 didn't get that far. So William Canales, Emerson Hernandez, and Jose Guevara, none of them named to the preliminary squad, just Nelson Rodriguez. So that leaves us with just Brian Tamakas on this side, and that's why we don't think he can play on the left, because then he will have no one on the right side. Let's tell you how the position played out over the period, though. Brian Tamakas played all 3 matches in the Gold Cup and has been the main player in the position through all the managerial changes, despite some non-call-ups in 2024. He was replaced in the summer of 2024 by Teresa Benitez, who actually did seem to be taking the position when he started the first 4 games of the fall 2024 Nations League group stage. Tamakas not even called up during that period. However, Tamakas reasserted his dominance for the November game, so that was under the previous manager, and then both of the March 2025 games under the new manager, Gomez. So Tamakas looking fairly likely there. So again, we're not confident enough to say definite things because the manager is so new. But we do put Brian Tamakis as a likely starter. And well, after part one, we had Teresa Benitez as a possible starter. However, Benitez was not selected for the squad, so we'll have to remove him. Let's look at the recent games, the warm-up games, to see if that informs us. We did see, as I said, Tamakis on the left side in the first friendly, begging the question of who played on the right side. Well, it was Diego Flores, the left defender there, the left back, playing on the right side. However, in both of the World Cup qualifying matches, Tamakis played on the right side. So perhaps Diego Flores is the backup over here. I didn't write that. I just kind of thought that right now. So we will have Brian Tamakis as, I'm going to say, a definite starter. Here he's been one of the most consistent starters on the team over the last period. And then Diego Flores, we will call him the backup, not a possible starter, but the backup for the position. Okay, I'm just fixing the graphics there, and we're ready to move on to the midfield. That's it for defense. We move on to the midfield, and we begin with a versatile, actually a couple of versatile midfielders whose names are going to come up in various positions, even at the attacking end of the midfield, perhaps even the forward and anyway, definitely as attacking midfielders as well as defending. So the first of the versatile midfielders is the likely candidate Darwin Sarin. We had no definite candidates here. So Darwin Sarin, a likely candidate, and Jairo Enriquez, both of those making the final squad. And their names are going to come up in various positions. Let's move to the defensive midfield. Here we have two definite candidates. The first one is Christian Martinez. However, he was not selected for the final squad. That was actually injury related. We'll talk about it in more detail in section 3, but a big loss there, Christian Martinez, but not as surprising as the others because it was injury related. The other definite candidate is Melvin Cartagena, and he was selected for the squad. We had no one at the likely level, and we go down to the possible level where we find Gabriel Richvicki. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut. Our possible but unlikely candidate, Jeremy Garay, not selected even for the preliminary squad, and nor was Isaac Portillo, who we had in the seemingly off the squad category. Actually, we're going to do all the midfield positions before we talk about starters. So let's move on to central midfield players, and we have none of them at the definite or likely level. At the possible level, we have Brian Landaverde, and he was selected for the final squad. We also have Narciso Orellana, a veteran with the team, but not making it this time, just making the preliminary squad. Two possible but unlikely candidates, neither of them making it, Andres Hernandez and Oscar Rodriguez. Oscar Rodriguez was an injury concern. We'll touch on it in part 3, but he had been an unlikely candidate anyway. And then seemingly off the squad, Eric Calvillo is seemingly off the squad because he was not selected even for the preliminary squad. So just one candidate coded as a central midfielder, Brian Landaverde. Let's see if there are any left midfielders. Well, in part 1, we only had one player here, and it was seemingly off the squad, Elvin Alvarado. However, he was selected for the final squad, so another surprise there, Elvin Alvarado. And then right midfielders, we had also just one candidate, but he was at the possible level. It was Kevin Santamaria. But don't get your hopes up. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad. Okay, so that is covering all the midfield. Let's go back to the top and predict our starters. So after, oh no, we'll do the summary of players in the position. But this is going to be like the central defense, where it was so complex that we ended up thinking, is it really worth going into detail on, because the new manager, it wouldn't matter under the new manager. We do want to start, though, by telling you who played in the Gold Cup. The 2023 Gold Cup had a two-man midfield, and it was Brian Landaverde starting all three, and Narciso Orellano 2 of the games. Christian Martinez started the other. And actually, Christian Martinez was the only player kind of consistently used throughout the period. But yes, as in central defense, it's not worth tracking all the changes because they ebbed and flowed a lot under the various managers and formations. So we'll jump to March of 2025, where we see Christian Martinez still there and Darwin Seren, those two paired up to start the first March 2025 match. Again, the second was experimental, so we won't go into detail on it, but we will say that Darwin Seren did start in that second game, while Christian Martinez did not. But it seems like the recent warm-up games are serving us much better as a guide to who are going to be the starters. So I'll just say that we were pretty much pretty confused after the after part one as to who the starters were going to be. So again, we didn't nominate a definite starter. We thought likely starters would be Christian Martinez and Darwin Seren, but possible starters could be a number of candidates, Landaverde, Cartagena, or Orellana. However, the warm-up games do shed some light. Well, we know Martinez was not selected due to injury, so he's out of the equation. Darwin Seren only appeared in the friendly. In the World Cup qualifiers, it was Brian Landaverde and Melvin Cartagena starting both of those as well as the friendly, so all 3 games. So that makes us feel almost definite that it's going to be Landaverde and Cartagena starting, but with El Salvador, we're not bold enough to say anything is definite. We're not sure of the status of Darwin Seren here. He was selected for the final squad, but didn't appear, or at least didn't start in the World Cup games there. So we're not sure whether he's going to be a starter. Okay, that is the whole midfield in one big chunk, or the defensive end of the midfield. And now we move on to attacking midfielders. And we begin with, do we have any versatile midfielders to tell you about? No, we do not. So we go straight to left attackers. We kind of explained what we mean by this position in part 1, but we won't repeat all of that here. We'll just focus on the candidates. So no definite candidates here. At the likely level, we had Rafael Tejada, and he was selected for the final squad. And we had at the possible but unlikely level Ezequiel Rivas, and he was not selected even for the preliminary squad there. And seemingly off the squad, Meyer Gill, also not selected even for the preliminary squad, having been part of the Gold Cup 2023 squad. We did move a couple of players out. Generally, when we do this mediacast, we move players to the position that they've been playing in over the period. But actually, I won't get into that because it's not that relevant. Okay, so let's look at the left attacking position. Very thin over here with just one candidate. We'll summarize the position over the period. It was Leonardo Menjivar, who's coded as a right midfielder, playing all three games, and he lined up as a left attacking winger in the 2023 Gold Cup. So left attacking winger, I believe that's a 4-4-2 formation. Well, it wasn't. It was a 4-4-1-1 formation, but same thing. Various players came in and out under the various managers. Again, not really worth going into detail on. No one was selected consistently, but we will say that Rafael Tejada played the last game under the old manager in November of 2024, as well as the first game under new manager Gomez in March 2025. And then in the second March game, we have central midfielder Narciso Orellana lining up in that experimental match. So very little to go on there. So we're going to make our prediction. This starter undefinable. We are firm that we don't know who it's going to be. But right now, the only candidate seems to be Rafael Tejada. So let's look at the warm-up games and see what we have. And in the first game, we have Santos Ortiz playing in the friendly as the left attacker. He was left attacking midfielder. And then it was versatile midfielder Jairo Enriquez in both of the Gold Cup qualifiers. And I'll actually explain that so we don't have to repeat it in the next part. In the first game, it was Santos Ortiz on the left and Jairo Enriquez on the right. And then in both World Cup games, they switched. So Jairo Enriquez played both games as left attacker in the Cup and Santos Ortiz as right attacker. So between them both, they cover the left attacking and right attacking position. So Rafael Tejada no longer really seems a consideration. Again, we're not bold enough to name a definite starter, but we're going to say likely starter Jairo Enriquez and possible starter Santos Ortiz. And that's going to be the same on the other side too. Let's go to the right attackers, though, and look at the candidates. So we had no candidate as a definite category. You'll see a lot of the players here are actually not coded as right attackers, but coded as various in other positions. But this is where they appeared the most. So our likely candidate is Francis Castillo. However, he only made the preliminary squad there, not selected for the final squad. Next, we have a possible candidate, Leonardo Menjivar. We saw that he started all three games in the Gold Cup, but on the left side. Well, here he played on the right when he played, but it all doesn't matter because he was selected. He was selected only for the preliminary squad. The next one, Nathan Ordaz. Well, he's a possible candidate here, but actually under new manager, he seemed a definite candidate. I think he was the only one to start all 5 games under the new manager. However, he was not selected for the final squad, despite starting as a central attacking midfielder in both of the Gold Cup games. That was after the squad was selected. So why would he be starting a player that he didn't select for the squad? Well, the answer seems to be that he plays for Los Angeles FC in the USA, which is one of the teams in the Club World Cup. So my only guess here is that he was not allowed to play for El Salvador because he had to play for LAFC in the Gold Cup. That's just my speculation, but it's the only thing that makes sense. So far we have 3 candidates, all of them only making the preliminary squad, and then the final possible candidate, Kevin Reyes, not even getting that far, not selected for the preliminary squad. We have 2 candidates who are seemingly off the squad. However, one of them, Jefferson Valladares, was selected for the final squad. So it's just shock after shock here. And the other one, Walmer Martinez, not selected even for the preliminary squad. So this is an odd situation. The more likely players not selected and the least likely players selected. Let's talk about the position over the period. We have Kevin Reyes starting the first game of the 2023 Gold Cup, and the versatile midfielder Jairo Enriquez starting the next 2 in the Gold Cup. Well, 4 different players started the 2023 Nations League group stage. With new managers and changing players. It continued to be very unsettled. But forward Nathan Ordaz played the last game under the old manager in November 2024, and then both games under the new manager in March 2025. Although he did line up as a forward in the experimental second game. So it was actually central midfielder Melvin Cartagena starting as the right attacker in that game. So there seemed to be some consistency there with Nathan Ordaz. So we basically had, similar to the left side, undefinable starter over here, just too many candidates coming in and out. But under the new manager, Nathan Ordaz looked the most likely, so we put him as a possible starter. When we get to the warm-up games, we see what I described on the left. It's a combination of Jairo Enriquez and Santos Ortiz, those 2 covering the same position. And I'll just say, I'll deal with Nathan Ordaz now. As I said, he started both games as the central attacking midfielder, which is very odd since he was, maybe they didn't know he was going to be at the Cup, because it was very unclear whether players' commitment would be to their club team in the Club World Cup or to their national team in the Gold Cup. And I'm not sure if any, it seems like some players chose one and some players chose the other. And I'm not sure if there were any rules or anything governing it. But anyway, it seems like Nathan Ordaz, as I said, the only logical reason. Okay, so what do we have here? Well, we have the same as on the left side, just in reverse. So likely starter, Jairo Enriquez. Oh, sorry, likely starter on this side would be Santos Ortiz, and the possible starter would be Jairo Enriquez. I'm not even sure I'm saying his name right, but anyway, that's what we're landing on here. Again, we're not brave enough to say anything definite for El Salvador. Let's move on to that central attacking position. And generally, it's not been used that much. In fact, during the period, just one time was the position used, a 4-2-3-1 formation. However, under the new manager, in the 3 most recent games, Gomez used this lineup, so it might be the lineup they're taking into the Cup, 4-2-3-1. So there is a central attacker. Let's look at the candidates first, and then deal with the history of the position over the period. So we have no definite and likely candidates. We have Pablo Puned as a possible candidate, but he didn't even make the preliminary squad. And then we have 2 players seemingly off the squad. The first one is Dustin Correa. He played for FC Edmonton, where I'm doing this from. So we have a fondness for Dustin Correa. Unfortunately, he also didn't make the preliminary squad even. But our second candidate, Enrico Hernandez, was selected for the final squad. So another big surprise there. And that's all we have over here. Let's talk about the position. It's actually pretty easily summarized because they only used it one time, and it was versatile midfielder Jairo Enriquez in the position that time. But we wouldn't predict a starter, because what we would really predict is that they don't use the formation. That's what we would have predicted after part one. However, as I said, in the warm-up games, they used the formation in all three of those games. It was versatile midfielder Darwin Seren in that position in the first game, the friendly. And then, as we've been saying, Nathan Ortiz played the position in both World Cup qualifiers, even though he was not selected for the final squad. So that leaves us very uncertain. I guess what we would just say is possible starter Darwin Seren, or it could be Jairo Enriquez, although it looks like he's slated to start as a left attacking player. So there we go. No definite or likely starter, but possible starters Seren or Enriquez. That is it for the midfield, and we move on to the forward line. For most teams, we don't have a secondary striker, but if you recall, the formation in the Gold Cup in all three of their games was a 4-4-1-1. So it actually does require this position, and we do have a couple of candidates, although we did move them to this position. The first one is Harold Osorio, actually coded as an attacking midfielder, so that's pretty close to secondary striker, and he was selected for the final squad, even though we had him as seemingly off the squad. He hadn't appeared for the team since November of 2023. So another surprise there, Harold Osorio, seemingly off the squad but selected. And even the fact that Joshua Perez was selected for the preliminary squad is a bit of a surprise, because he was also seemingly off the squad, having last played in the Gold Cup. So there's another Gold Cup, not a starter, but he did sub into halftime in game one and then became a starter. Yet another Gold Cup 2023 alumni not selected for the squad, or going off the squad during this period. Okay, that is it. We're not going to summarize the position, though, because we doubt they will use a 4-4-1-1 formation this time around. So we're just going to go on to the main forwards here, and we have quite a long list. However, no one at the definite level, but we have two at the likely level. First one is Nelson Molina, and he was not even named to the preliminary squad. Again, we tried to look into it and find out why. It just seems to be that he's not favored by the new manager. The new manager has other players in mind. That's just our speculation, because we didn't find any information. The second likely candidate, Steven Vasquez, was selected for the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final squad. So it's just surprise after surprise here. We have four possible candidates, and three of them actually did make it. The first one is Brian Gill. He was a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup, as we'll see, but was off the squad for a lot of this period. He's back. The second possible candidate, Javier Furman, not selected even for the preliminary squad. The third one, Emerson Mauricio, was selected for the final squad. And we've been talking about Santos Ortiz. Looks like he's going to be the starter as right attacker on the field. He's actually coded as a central midfielder, but we moved him to forward. That's, I think, why I've been calling him a forward. We moved him to the forward position as those were his only starts during the period other than the warm-up games. So anyway, Santos Ortiz selected for the final squad. We had two possible but unlikely candidates, Armando Moreno and Joaquin Rivas. Both of those made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. And we had four candidates seemingly off the squad. I'll just name two of them who did not make the final squad or even the preliminary squad. That was Christian Gill and Juan Carlos Argueta. Neither of those selected for the preliminary squad. However, the other two were selected for the final squad. Good heavens. Steve Guerra making the final squad, and Jose Rivera also kind of coming out of the wilderness to be selected for the final squad. So more surprises right at the end there for you. And that was thrilling. And we move into section 3. And here we want to welcome listeners to the short version of the mediacast. We are racing through a review of what we covered in mostly in section 2 of the full version. So for those who listen to the full version, it'll be a review. And for new listeners, it'll be a galloping horse ride through the squad as we look at who was selected and who we think our starters are going to be. So we begin with manager Hernan Dario Gomez. And just quickly, I'll say 4 managers over the period since the last Gold Cup. Players coming in and out like crazy. And then Hernan Dario Gomez coming in right at the end and choosing new players and not selecting players for the squad. It's crazy. We'll show you. Okay, let's go to goalkeepers. So we have definite candidate Mario Gonzalez and Thomas Romero. Gonzalez was selected for the squad. Thomas Romero, surprisingly not. We don't know why. We had a possible candidate, Oscar Plates. He didn't even make the preliminary squad. But 2 of our possible but unlikely candidates made the final cut. And that was Kevin Carabantes and Benji Villalobos. So those 3 goalkeepers. In terms of predictions, well, after looking at the warm-up games, things are a lot more clear. So we can be much more clear than we could have been after the end of part 1 of this media cast. So definite starter, Mario Gonzalez there. We move on to central defense, and we have 2 definite candidates, Jorge Cruz and Julio Cibrian, both of those selected for the final squad. And 2 likely candidates, Rudy Clavel and Adan Clamaco. Neither of those selected. Rudy Clavel not even making the preliminary squad there. And then 4 possible candidates, Roberto Dominguez and Henry Romero, both of those selected for the final squad. Ronald Rodriguez for the preliminary squad, but Melvin Cruz not even for the preliminary squad. The 2 starters in the Gold Cup 2023, as is the case for many positions here, Eric Zabaleta and Eric Zavaleta, both of those seemingly off the squad at this point. Okay, or we had them seemingly off the squad. They weren't even named to the preliminary squad. And that's true of several starters or players in the previous Gold Cup. Let's move on to left backs. No definite candidate, but we had a likely candidate in Nelson Blanco, not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad. However, our second one, Alexander Larin, was selected for the final squad, and so was our possible candidate, Diego Flores. And so there we have definite starter. Well, we're never going to be able to predict a definite starter because there haven't been enough games under the new manager. But likely starter Alexander Larin over here. I forgot to mention the starters in central defense. Having just said what I said, we did put Jorge Cruz and Julio Cibrian as definite starters over here, and possible starter Roberto Dominguez. So, oops, sorry about that. Let's move over to right backs. More shocks here. Definite candidate Teriso Benitez, not selected, only for the preliminary squad. Likely candidate Brian Tamakis was selected, and well, that's all we'll deal with here. So Brian Tamakis, the only one over here, and in the end, we say definite starter Brian Tamakis. Yes, definite starter, and his backup will be left back Diego Flores, we think. Okay, I'm making myself look stupid by saying we didn't predict any definite starters. I think from here on we don't predict any definite starters. Okay, let's go on to the midfield. We'll run through all the positions and then talk about the starters. So we put two players as versatile midfielders because they appear all over the place. That's Darwin Seren and Jairo Enriquez. Both of those selected for the final squad. Defensive midfielders, Christian Martinez, a definite candidate, but didn't make the final cut, that due to injury, so he is not there. Melvin Cartagena, our other definite candidate, was selected for the final squad. Possible candidate Gabriel Richvicki only made the preliminary squad there. Players coded as central midfielders, we have no definite or likely candidates. Two possible candidates, Brian Landaverde was selected for the final squad, but Narciso Orellana not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad. Players coded as left midfielders, we just had one on our list who was seemingly off the squad, Elvin Alvarado, but lo and behold, he was selected for the final squad. And then for right midfielders, we just had one candidate at the possible level, Kevin Santamaria, who did not even make the preliminary squad. Now we're ready to boil down our predictions here. After looking at the warm-up games, we think Brian Landaverde and Melvin Cartagena are likely starters. Upfield to the attacking midfield, we start with left attackers over here, and after part one on our list we had Rafael Tejada as a likely candidate. He was selected for the final squad, but that was it for possible candidates or above over here. After looking at the warm-up games, we think well, what we saw is versatile midfielder Jairo Enriquez and Santos Ortiz, coded as a central midfielder, playing more as a forward. Those two players, Enriquez and Ortiz, sharing the left and right attacking positions. So that's what we think. So we think Jairo Enriquez will be a likely starter on the left, Santos Ortiz a possible starter on the left, and we're going to reverse that on the right side. But let's look at the candidates first. We had no definite candidate. We had a likely candidate, Francis Castillo, only making the preliminary squad. And then two of our three possible candidates, Leonardo Menjivar, again, a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup, and only making the preliminary squad, and Nathan Ordaz, who seemed favoured by the manager, started both of the all three of the warm-up games there, but it seems that he as a player for LAFC, Los Angeles FC, has to play in the Club World Cup. So not making the final cut here, though he was on the preliminary squad. So three of those candidates, Castillo, Menjivar, and Ordaz, all three of them on the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. The other possible candidate, Kevin Reyes, not even making the preliminary squad. And then seemingly off the squad, Jefferson Valadares, making the cut. He's the only one here on the final squad. In terms of predictions of starters, as I said, Ortiz and Enriquez, I explained that on the left midfielders. Central attackers, we did have some candidates over here. In fact, the position was used in the three warm-up games. For candidates, we had Pablo Puned at the possible level. He was not even selected for the preliminary squad. However, one of our players who was seemingly off the squad, Enrico Hernandez, was selected for the final squad. So another surprise there. In terms of starters, if they use the position, we think it could be versatile midfielder Darwin Seren or Jairo Enriquez. If they do use the position. Moving on to the forwards, we have two players that we put in the secondary striker category, both of them seemingly off the squad. However, both of them made the preliminary squad, and one of them, Harold Osorio, made the final cut. So Harold Osorio selected to the squad. For the main forwards, we had two likely candidates. No definite candidates, two likely candidates, Nelson Bonilla and Steven Vasquez. Nelson Bonilla not even making the preliminary squad, Steven Vasquez just the preliminary squad there. Among our three possible candidates, three of them made the final squad. Brian Gill, Emerson Mauricio, and Santos Ortiz, who we talked about earlier. The fourth one, Javier Furman, did not even make the preliminary squad. And then two of the players seemingly off the squad, Steven Guerra and Josie Rivera, both of those making the final cut. So crazy stuff. And that brings us to the end of our Spotlight review. And we move on to section 3, or to complete our business in section 3, and that is going to be a review of surprises. And holy cow, there are a lot of them. We begin with notable non-selections. So we begin with Thomas Romero, the goalkeeper. We considered him a definite candidate, but he only made the preliminary squad. The same is true of Tereso Benitez. The right back, we also considered him definite. The left back, Aidan Climaco, we considered him a likely candidate, only made the preliminary squad. Centre back, Rudy Clavel, we considered him likely, but he didn't even make the preliminary squad. And then we have left back, Nelson Blanco, same situation. Likely candidate just making the preliminary squad. That is true of Francis Castillo, likely candidate just making the preliminary squad. And then we have likely candidate Nelson Bonilla. He is a forward, and he didn't even make the preliminary squad. So many surprises. The last one here is Steven Vasquez. Also, it could be Steven Vasquez there. Also a forward, and also a likely candidate, but only making the preliminary squad. So wow, what a large number there. For surprise inclusions, the list is almost as long. We have possible but unlikely goalkeeper Kevin Carabantes making the final cut. And same with Benji Villalobos. Benji Villalobos at the possible but unlikely level, but selected for the final squad. We have Elvin Alvarado, coded as a left midfielder. He was seemingly off the squad, so came in out of the blue there. Right midfielder Jefferson Valadares, same, seemingly off the squad, but selected for the final squad. Attacking midfielder, we actually had him in the secondary striker category. Harold Osorio, also seemingly off the squad. This is actually true of all the remaining players. They were coded as seemingly off the squad in part 1, and surprisingly was selected for the final squad. So after Harold Osorio, we have Steven Guerra, a forward, and then Josie Rivera, a forward, and Enrico Hernandez, an attacking midfielder. So all of those players making the squad, even though they seemed unlikely or even seemed to be off the squad. New candidates, well, actually, not so many here. And I think we forgot to introduce them as we were going, so I'll introduce them here. The first one is a defensive midfielder. It's Mauricio Cerritos. And he has no caps for El Salvador. He's 22 years old. However, he was named to the preliminary squad for the 2023 Gold Cup. That's when he first showed up on our radar. But otherwise didn't appear until named to the preliminary squad. The other one is Brandon Ramirez. We were a bit confused by this because he didn't seem to be on the 44-man preliminary roster. He is just 17 years old. But he does have his first cap for El Salvador in one of the warm-up games there, and he scored as well. So Brandon Ramirez, new to the squad, hadn't appeared even on the bench when named to the preliminary squad, but already has a goal under his belt. So he may provide a bit of excitement in the cup, and apologies for not introducing them along the way. But holy cow, we have been busy in this mediacast. Okay, finally our update on injuries. So we'll just show you what we had at the end of part one there. In fact, we won't talk about Pablo Puned or Emerson Mauricio. We talked about them in part one, but even then they had recovered from their injuries, so we don't need to repeat all of that. We have a couple of new injuries, but we'll talk about the no, let's deal with the new injuries. So Leonardo Menjivar, he was out with an unknown injury and an unknown return date. We think it happened perhaps in the last game of the season on May 25th, because in that game he was subbed out at the 50-minute mark, which is a bit of an unusual time if it's a strategic subbing. So we think it may have been an injury subbing. Otherwise, he was fine up until that game, but then coded as injured on his international page. So Leonardo Menjivar was only a possible candidate. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but not selected for the final squad, perhaps because of the injury. So we're going to say injured, but was not a strong candidate there for Leonardo Menjivar, despite being a starter in the 2023 Gold Cup. However, the other one is a big loss. It's Christian Martinez, the defensive midfielder, who we considered a definite candidate. Christian Martinez was out with a torn muscle bundle and an unknown return date. It happened actually in late March, so we should have been aware of it when we were doing part one of this mediacast, but we were not. We didn't see anything on its international page indicating it. His injury did last until the end of the season, so we're assuming that that is the reason that he was not selected for the final squad. However, he had been put on the preliminary squad, so we also assume there must have been hopes of his recovery in time for the tournament. But it seems not, and we are going to call Christian Martinez a player dropped due to injury. Okay, well, we will put Puned and Emerson Mauricio on the list as recovered from injury, although they had recovered by the time we did part one. And then we have a few updates to do here. So Esquiel Rivas, he was out for Achilles tendon surgery since January 2025 with an unknown return date. His status remains the same, so his injury precludes his consideration, but he was only at the possible but unlikely level anyway, so that there is that. Okay, the other one also at the possible but unlikely level, Gerson Lopez. He was on the injured list with no information available when we did part one. He is no longer on the injury list, but he was not selected even for the preliminary squad. He seems to be without a club right now. So a lot arguing against him there. And we will also put Gerson Lopez, the goalkeeper, as injured but not a strong candidate. The same will be true of our last candidate, Oscar Rodriguez, a central midfielder. He was listed with an unknown injury when we did part one of the mediacast. No further information available. And like Gerson Lopez, he's no longer on the injury list and was actually on the bench for his club at the end of May. Coming back from his injury, but again, not selected for the preliminary squad and had not been a strong candidate. So those injuries, not that significant. The significant one is Christian Martinez out of the tournament due to his injury. Okay, that brings us to the end of our look at El Salvador's team players here in section 2, and I do have something to say in the outro here once I get the graphics in line here. And what I have to say is it is possible that there will be some changes between now and the tournament. They usually are, players dropping out or replaced. And so we are going to do, just before the tournament begins, or maybe just as it begins, a last minute update on any changes that happen between the time of this mediacast and the start of the tournament. Okay, so stay tuned for that, and we hope we're helping you to enjoy the Gold Cup. We would like to thank Future Bass for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. The title is called Alone.